Welcome to the Going Within Fertility podcast, where three holistic health practitioners come together to explore the innate wisdom of the body and help you reclaim the power of your fertility journey. We're here to bridge the gaps in women's reproductive health, offering integrative perspectives so you can feel informed, empowered, and remind you that the ability to heal and thrive lies within. The information provided in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. We encourage you to reach out to your trusted medical practitioner to discuss your unique health history and experiences. As always, you are the expert in your body's health. So listen deeply, go within, and let's move from the space where science and intuition meet.
Welcome to our very first episode of the Going Within Fertility podcast. We wanted to spend some time introducing ourselves so you have a bit more information about each of us, our backgrounds, and what brought us to fertility, as well as each other. I'm Dr. Bethany Netherda, here with my colleagues Darcie Black and Jessica Doyle. And Darcie, I know that you are a holistic reproductive health practitioner and a certified fertility awareness educator. Talk to us a little bit more about how you became both of those things and how you work with clients now.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bethany. So, my undergraduate degree was in health education, and I had a minor in integrative health studies. This is really what kind of brought me down the path of holistic health at the time. That's when it was called like complementary and alternative health. It has evolved over the years, but my foundation is in health education. I was on the path to become a high school health teacher. And I like to think that, I didn't stray too far off that path. But when I was in undergrad, I learned about doulas and learned about herbalism at that point. And those seeds were planted. They definitely took root. And within about a year and a half, 2 years after graduating from my undergrad, I started following both of those paths. So I became a certified doula. I did an initial herbalism program and just started to really dive into women's health, fertility. It was really focused on prenatal health and postpartum health at the time. So I guess kind of fast forward a little bit, I had also opened up a little brick and mortar herbal apothecary with three other women locally while I was doing doula work. That was a piece of my life. That was a hat I wore at one point. And then I, really wanted to dive into fertility and reproductive health a little bit deeper. I had begun charting my cycles. I had begun tracking my cycles, and I basically went into my program in holistic reproductive health just to nerd out about my own body and to better understand what was happening within my own system. So I ended up completing a 2-year program through Justice College to become a certified fertility awareness educator and a holistic reproductive health practitioner. So shortly after I completed that program, I began working for Maven Clinic, which is where the three of us met virtually, which is a virtual women's health clinic. And it felt like such an organic connection between my work as a doula. At that point, I think I had been working as a doula for probably 6 or 8 years. My foundation in working with people was based on providing education, providing references and resources and referrals. And it felt really easeful to shift into this position as a fertility awareness educator, helping people who are in the midst of their preconception process or in the midst of their fertility journey. And so I kind of pulled my skills from my work as a doula and then combined that with the skill set and the knowledge and my clinical training that I had learned through Justice to help people understand what their options are throughout their preconception process, help people to just understand the basics of how their reproductive health functions, or how their reproductive organs function, how that entire process works, just understanding their bodies, increasing body literacy, and doing it in a way that allows people to take their health into their own hands. I went into my graduate program in holistic reproductive health because I had just begun learning how to track my cycle, and I was in the forever version of life, getting to know my own cycle and getting to know my hormones and getting to know my body. And so my personal health history includes having PCOS, having autoimmune thyroiditis, Hashimoto's. I experience what's referred to as dysmenorrhea, so painful menstruation. And I have both used hormonal contraception and have used non-hormonal contraceptive methods. So, I think that in some ways that can be helpful to, weave personal experiences in with understanding how to best support folks in clinical practice. But yeah, that's a little bit about me and where I am now. So Jessica Doyle, you are a registered nurse, health coach, and certified nutritional therapy practitioner. Why don't you share a little bit about yourself, your journey, and what's brought you here?
Awesome. Thank you, Darcie. I love that even after 6 years of working with you, I already learned a little bit more about you today. I love the health teacher avenue that you were talking about. But yeah, so I graduated from nursing school back in 2005, and I worked as a labor and delivery nurse. My mother had been a neonatal nurse practitioner, so I just kind of loved that side of women's health. And so I worked at a few different hospitals, and after about 7 or 8 years, I started to have some health issues. I think probably from working nights and the standard American diet that I was on, and I started kind of investigating that, kind of like you were talking about, nerding out about your own body, and I found functional medicine. So I kind of started learning about that, and then as I investigated that a little bit more, there was a clinic that offered a RN position, and I took that, and so then I kind of went into the functional medicine world, and I worked doing that as a nurse for about 5 or 6 years. And one of the things I saw was that even with that amazing avenue, people still had a hard time with getting their health right if they didn't address nutrition. And so I decided to go back to school for nutrition. I'd always kind of liked it and understanding about things. And so I did a 2-year program to be a certified nutritional therapy practitioner. And it's kind of like a functional medicine perspective of nutrition. After graduating, I went to work at Maven, which is how I met these lovely ladies, which is very fertility based and women's health based. I didn't have a ton of experience in fertility at that point, more so like pregnancy and postpartum. So I took another certification to be a pregnancy health coach and prenatal and fertility health coach, and kind of dove into that and started working through that, and just so in love with how much that can help optimize health and then equally optimize fertility with that. I really love the fertility clientele because they are so motivated. A lot of the time with nutrition, you tend to get patients that are doing, serial dieting and they want the newest thing. But with fertility patients, they strive for optimal health, and that really helps with kind of getting fertility back on. A lot of the conditions, like you mentioned, Darcie, like PCOS and things like that, have that big nutritional component too. And speaking between the two of you guys through Maven, really hearing about what Darcie did as a Justice practitioner, and then Bethany, of course, I always say one of the smartest people I know. I'll let you introduce yourself, just her perspective on fertility and hormones and all of that as well too.
That's so sweet, Jess. I can't even, at this point, it's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I got roped in to the best group possible. And I'm like, I didn't even mean to. So that's really sweet. And I feel the same. And it was interesting because Maven, was my ideal of what I hoped practice would be like, where you could have the system of cross-referring to different providers to really allow people to go more in depth around their health. I think that's what we were doing well and what we hope to bring across in this podcast as far as our perspectives. But as far as my background, I am a naturopathic doctor. I am registered here in Colorado. I did a private residency in naturopathic medicine that was really women's health and pediatrics focused in Seattle after I graduated from Bastyr there. And I was really lucky because my mentor was a naturopathic doctor and licensed midwife. And this was right before the pandemic. So I wasn't even there quite a year before the shutdown, but I just learned so much. And she had stopped attending births, catching babies by that point. But I felt like my experience in my residency in particular was so valuable because we did get to see newborns up. And I was doing immunization visits and pap smears, anything in between, well, children exams. Another one of the docs at the practice was awesome. She was an ND and an acupuncturist, and she did a lot of acupuncture for fertility. And so that was something that I was really interested in and had just kind of started to learn about. And so I applied at Maven and I got it. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is awesome. I can make my own hours. And I ended up meeting you all. So that was cool. But fertility is a personal passion of mine right now since I'm going through my own fertility journey. And what I really love about naturopathic medicine in general is that it encompasses the whole person. And so as far as how I got there, I was studying wildlife biology and ecology and botany. And I was thinking about my career prospects. And I had a naturopathic doctor really help me with my own health while I was in undergrad. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. I can learn about herbal medicine and I can really bridge my love of the world and people and sustainability in this really cool way. And so I love the lifestyle aspect and nutrition and herbal medicine and geeking out about our bodies and being empowered around our health that I think you both offer, but naturopathic medicine in general really strives to incorporate. So that's why I had initially applied, and I did get go right from my undergrad to Bastyr in Washington. And I just found that fertility in particular, women's health, were things I loved. And that herbs and homeopathics and flower essences work so well. Those are some of my favorite things to use in practice now. Yeah, that's a little bit about my background.
I just love listening to your stories and hearing about how your own health journey has kind of pushed you into, then empowering women to be able to be educated about their health. And I think that's definitely one of the things that drew me to you guys is, while we do a lot of the same things, we definitely have a lot of different tools that we use. And I love the idea for this podcast because we're really able to look at, 3 different professions and how we address fertility. And like you mentioned before, sometimes it's alternative medicine or functional medicine, but I think, it's looking at maybe not something that people hear every day and hearing about these different tools that everybody can use and educate themselves around. I know with Darcie and cycle tracking, and really understanding what the cycle means and the different, ways we feel and the different symptoms we have and how that plays into it. And I'll let you talk, Darcie, a little bit more about your experience with, working with different modalities through Maven.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that from this point, like this point of my life or like this vantage point, there's an evolution in understanding humans, right? Like understanding health is a very humbling experience. And I think, both within ourselves as well as when we're working with clients. And so just as, even those words, like, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, like it was always referred to as like complementary medicine or alternative medicine, as though it was separate from, Western, what is considered like conventional mainstream, medicine model, right? And over the years, it's now become more of a term to say like holistic medicine, right? And there is this kind of shift into not separate, like not separating systems in the body, right? I think in many ways, and maybe my lens is a little bit, influenced because I'm just, sitting from this vantage point and this perspective, but it is both within understanding the body through this holistic lens, understanding that you cannot separate, like we can't separate the digestive function from the hormonal function in many ways, right? And similarly, like we can't, separate, or not that we can't separate, but there's so much richness when we do allow ourselves to kind of move holistically in regards to how we approach a health condition or a scenario within our systems. And that's one of the things, that I love about working, with both of you in the Maven Clinic, is that we have this ability to refer to one another and to say, oh, this, I think that, you could really benefit from zeroing in on this particular element of your health. And so as an FAE, a fertility awareness educator at Maven, sometimes my sessions are like basic body literacy. Oftentimes it is basic body literacy. It is helping people to understand what their body is saying, helping people to connect with symptoms that their body may be giving them that indicates what the heck is happening with their hormones, right? Like their actual bodily fluids and sensations and changes that tell us, oh, estrogen's high right now, or progesterone's high right now, right? So oftentimes it looks like body literacy. And then beyond that, once we start to understand these things, then we might get to a place where we can collect the data. So then we're looking for patterns, right? And then once we are able to see these patterns or collect this data, then we can say, does this fall within the expected parameters? Like, is this normal? Is this healthy? And then if something falls outside of that space, that's when we then get to do the deep dive, right? And so I might be working with someone and starting to recognize that their menstrual cycle is really giving indications that their adrenal function is needing more support, right? And so we're talking about stress response in the body. We're talking about all of the ways that the body will show this stress response. And so then I might say, hey, it could be a really great idea for you to connect with Dr. Bethany and start to go down that path of understanding what does your adrenal health look like. So yeah, I guess Bethany, thinking about it from that perspective, like how do you I guess both like separate and keep things, linked all together in this, holistic lens in your work?
Yeah, that's the trick. I think that's the art of it. Because, and a blessing and a curse, I always say, for a naturopathic doctor, my job is to make sure we're not missing anything. And so when I get a referral from a client from Jessica or Darcie, I'm so thankful. And there's been so many times where something like learning your body and realizing these signs, we can think about testing adrenal, we can think about testing thyroid, when a lot of people's primary care or OBGYN says, you don't need it. And maybe, but I think a lot of people want to be proactive about their health and they want to have that information. And so if we've seen the trends in their cycle, we talk about, okay, is it realistic to do some testing of fasting morning cortisol or insulin level based on what we're seeing with symptoms or within their cycle tracking? Is really cool that I get to kind of help guide people through that. And I always say I take a larger bird's eye view of things. So I will absolutely make recommendations for nutrition, lifestyle, movement, mindfulness, but also herbs and nutrients, within reason, based on research, and letting symptoms be our guide. And then also back to Jess, maybe thinking a little bit more about what is a glycemic load rather than me just telling them, look out for that. So I think we all really complement each other well in those ways.
Yeah, I think too, like, kind of going back to what Darcie was saying about how we compartmentalize, different groups of medicine. And I think it's when you go to your general practitioner, they send you, to a GI doctor for GI issues. GI health is connected to hormonal health, where a lot of the time I feel like patients don't realize that because they are going through that kind of standard medicine versus being able to really look at the whole picture.
Totally. And maybe at some point we can address the difference with functional disease, because I know a lot of the people that we see get frustrated, right? Maybe they have had a workup with a specialist and they say, nothing's wrong. And then they hear about something like the Dutch test or a comprehensive stool analysis. And we do get so much information from those tests. I think that's one of my favorite things to go through with people and really provide that education around the differences with the conventional medicine tests as far as labs go and even treatments versus what we can do from a holistic functional standpoint. And I think a lot of people are interested in that. And on the flip side of that coin, I think that I am lucky to be in the position of being there when we need to go digging. Like sometimes, especially with fertility workups, I'm the first one to say, hey, we need to look for inflammation. We need to look for toxins or underlying autoimmune issues, which can be really disheartening when people have been going through fertility treatments for a while. And to say, well, nobody thought about this before. Or also, everything is really looking okay, and having faith in the process and continuing to keep up all of the health and lifestyle things that you're already doing. Pros and cons for sure, but that's exactly what I'm here for.
And that's what I love about, like, in many ways, I feel like all of us really use education as our foundation when we're working with our clients and patients, where, sometimes it's just helping people to understand the basics and then trusting them to then apply that or take it with them, or just see what happens after we provide that kind of maybe more basic kind of information. Like, how does that seed get planted within them, right? Like, what does that maybe bring to the forefront of their mind later on in the week, thinking back to, oh yeah, Dr. Bethany was saying this, or oh yeah, Jess was saying that. This really kind of comes back to why we've created this podcast, because, we want people to recognize that the answer is not like outside of ourselves. The answer is not held by someone in a white coat sitting in a clinic office, right? Like, the answer is within us. And so, just being able to understand and recognize, like, okay, here's some basic information. Here is what I'm understanding about a concept. Here's what I'm understanding about bodies. Here's what I'm understanding about my unique body, right? And then taking that information and it's a relationship, right? And bringing it back to the provider and talking about, like, well, this is what I'm noticing, or what does it mean if XYZ, really wanting to orient back to the individual. Like, we trust you, we trust your body, right? And sometimes we just need a little bit of an oomph, like a little bit of a leg up, right? And we just I always think about it as like, I'm walking the path with my clients, right? And so I see us all as, our paths are, maybe parallel to one another. They're winding in their own ways. They might be a little bit separate, but in many ways, they're right alongside one another. So that's what I love about the work that each of us do, and the ways that we are able to work together to ultimately support our clients in finding that answer within themselves, in finding, having that lived experience where their body, maybe goes from giving them signals that something is off to their body giving them signs of like vibrant health and returning to a place of, just more vibrant health.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much for being here today. It's always amazing to chat with you.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes, thank you so much. Great chatting with you girls.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Going Within Fertility. If you're inspired by anything you've heard or would like to work with Dr. Bethany Netherda, Jessica Doyle, or Darcie Black on your hormonal health or fertility journey, visit our website at goingwithinfertility.com to learn more. And don't forget to like, subscribe, or share this episode with a friend. See you next time.